And a happy Friday, everybody. Last start or sit episode for the 2022 season, as we're obviously into 2023. And good morning. I'm Adam Azer with Dave Richard and Jamie Eisenberg. We got 8 games to talk about today, and at least 2 of them are going to have question marks in terms of who is going to play: Tampa Bay at Atlanta and the Giants at Philadelphia. The other games, the Rams at the Seahawks, the Lions at the Packers. This is the big one here. Lions at Packers on Sunday night. Dallas at Washington, Arizona at San Francisco, Carolina, New Orleans, and Minnesota at Chicago. All right, let's make some playoff predictions. Dave, you can start. Who's getting in the AFC and the NFC?
The NFC will be the Packers. The AFC will be the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah. Okay. Jamie, what do you got?
Packers and Dolphins. I think Dolphins beat the Jets, and the Bills beat the Patriots, and Packers win, even with the Seahawks winning too.
I mean, that I want to say that. I want to say the Packers. I'll say in the AFC, I'll say the Dolphins also. Ooh, don't feel great about that.
Yeah, that's why I picked the Steelers.
Yeah. Just for fun. Now, if they all lose, the Patriots win? Do the Patriots get in?
No,
depends on what happens.
Oh, right.
Happens in the Saturday night game.
I think I'm going to say the Seahawks because I really like the Lions, and I think they're the best team of the 3. And I think I don't really know that they'll beat the Packers, but just for fun, I think they'll beat the Packers, and the Seahawks will, if they win, the Seahawks, that's going to be a dogfight. But if the Seahawks win, then they'll benefit.
Agree.
Wasn't the victory over the Packers the start of this run for them?
I'm
not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, if the game were in Detroit, I would definitely pick the Lions. You know, can they do it outdoors? It's obviously a big.
You're right, Jamie. That's where the run began for the Lions against Green Bay. Lions won that game 15-9. Since that game, they've scored 31, 31, 25, 40, 34, 20, 23, and 41 points.
Was that the week they also traded Hockenson?
Yeah, it's about, yes. I think they traded Hockenson the week before.
Okay.
He was holding back.
So, yeah, right.
It was the hair.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to that game. And I mean, I feel bad saying this. I kind of hope the Seahawks lose just so that's a winner take all game, but I think a lot of people are probably feeling that way. But all right, let's talk the big news here. DeMar Hamlin showing signs of improvement. We got a statement from the Bills yesterday. I mean, by the time you hear this, you might get another statement, and hopefully it keeps trending in the right direction, but he has shown remarkable improvement over the past 24 hours. That was yesterday morning, Thursday morning. He even asked who won the game. So things have gone well and trending in the right direction. Everybody rejoicing for that. Obviously,
keep going.
We see a lot of Bills Mafia shirts. You won ... at life.
You won it. Yep, that's what the doctor said to him when he was that who it was, the doctor, when he asked who won the game. So
they said
he didn't ask, he wrote it.
Did.
He wrote it, right. And Buffalo Cincinnati has been canceled. The game that was the week 17 game, the stats from week 17 will not count, but that game will not be made up. So if you were planning on using the makeup game or considering that for your fantasy scores, that game is not happening. We did offer the solution of using their first playoff game or the week 18 game. But as we sit here on Friday and the NFL is considering using a neutral site for the AFC Championship game, which is interesting. But as we sit here on Friday, how confident do you guys feel that both the Bills and the Bengals will be playing their starters and really going for it in Week 18?
Bills definitely. Bengals pretty confidently, yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think you can use Week 18 if you want to do that, if you want to go that route. Let's do an update on who is sitting. Yesterday we said we expect the Giants and Bucs to sit their starters for at least some of the game. The Chargers could be in that category. If they're locked in, they could be locked into their seed by the time their game kicks off. We talked about Minnesota as a possibility, not Detroit, even if they are eliminated from playoff contention by the Seahawks earlier in the day. It seems like Detroit's going to go all out. Dave, is there anything you want to add to this? Who might be sitting their starters?
Well, we already heard in Chicago that Justin Fields is going to sit. And so that starts the sinkhole of, well, who else is going to sit? And so I wonder if there's going to be other players on the Bears that might sit because the team values them. They want them to be healthy and ready to go for next year. So I'd be real careful with Bears players. And then that'll have a domino effect on the Vikings. Vikings have to win the game, of course, and they'll want to build a lead. But you might not get 4 quarters out of Cousins, out of Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, etc. So in that game, I'd be a little worried. I don't think you're going to get, you mentioned the Bucs. I don't think you're going to get 4 quarters out of their guys. You'll probably get 4 quarters out of the Falcons guys. And I think the Commanders might start resting some players, or at least playing guys that are younger. It doesn't look good for Brian Robinson. He's got to practice on Friday in order for him to get in. And Sam Howell's starting. So that should give you an idea of what the Commanders offense, or what the Commanders coaching staff rather is thinking when it comes to their young players.
There's an interesting pricing on FanDuel. It's not the case on DraftKings, but Alexander Madison is $7,000 on FanDuel, which is the same as Jamal Williams, a little more than AJ Dillon, J.K. Dobbins. It's more
right behind like Akers.
Yeah, Akers is 73, then Najee, then Kamara, DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, Alexander Madison. So that tells you what they're planning for, and DraftKings is not like that. Madison's very cheap.
Yep.
So that's just, what some people are thinking at least. Okay, so we'll talk about a lot of that actually on today's show, because a lot of the NFC teams, I think we're more concerned about them resting than the AFC teams, or playing the younger guys. But okay, let's do let me promote FFT in 5. Just like Fantasy Football Today in 5 is not going away during the offseason. It's a 5-minute show. Yesterday, I hopped on there with Chris to talk about our top running backs, our top 12 running backs. We had a lot of disagreements there. Let's see. I did not have Dalvin Cook. I had Javonte Williams in there at number 12. So it gets pretty interesting after 3 or 4, really. And a lot of people are going to disagree on Jonathan Taylor, too. So check that out. But Fantasy Football Today in 5, all off season long, we'll have episodes there. News and notes. Run over some of the things go over. I don't want to run over anything. But some of the things we talked about yesterday. Sam Howell is going to start for Washington. Tom Brady's going to start, but we don't expect him to play a full game. Mike White is questionable. So that is one that we have to keep an eye on. They may not play him. And
that would suck for him. It really would.
Yeah. The homecoming.
It would be Flacco, I would imagine.
Okay. It's going to be Skylar
You never
Thompson.
know. You never know if Zach Wilson gets a chance to play.
Who do you think the Dolphins want to see?
They'd like to see Zach Wilson.
Probably.
They'll take Joe Flacco, though.
Yeah, it could be Zach Wilson or Joe Flacco versus.
Hey, can I change my AFC playoff pick if it's Zach Wilson?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So I think I may have said yesterday that Trevor Siemian was starting for the Bears. That is definitely not the case. Nathan Peterman is starting for the Bears.
Yes, they are. The other thing with the Bears is that if they lose and the Texans beat the Colts, they've got the number 1 pick in the draft. So when you're going for the number 1 pick, you got to start Nathan Peterman.
Well, Peterman has made 4 starts in his career. He's 1-3, and all 3 losses were by 30 or more points.
He is perfect for them this week.
David is starting, and Lamar Jackson is almost certainly out.
Mike Garofalo just tweeted something from Ryan Dunleavy, who also covers the Giants for the New York Post, that they're going to sit their guys.
Yeah, I've seen so much of that. So, James Conner day-to-day with listen carefully, a shin injury.
You said it yesterday.
I said shin.
No, you did not.
Adam, potty mouth.
Tony
You
Pollard.
said he had a poop problem.
Let's see. Oh, all right. Are you guys worried about any of these players playing? Christian McCaffrey.
James Conner's got a colon problem.
Christian McCaffrey, Ken Walker, Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, Brian Robinson. McCaffrey, Walker, Sanders, Jacobs, Robinson. How many of them are you actually concerned about missing the game?
Robinson, yes. McCaffrey's interesting because he told David Lombardi, who covers the 49ers for ESPN, that he should be fine. It's just his normal maintenance. But you have to wonder about how much he'll play if they're playing wildcard weekend. So he's a little nerve-wracking, but he could clearly have 100 total yards and a touchdown before the first quarter ends against that defense. The only reason I would be concerned about McCaffrey playing is if they activate Elijah Mitchell for the game. So if they make that transaction, then I would be a little bit more concerned about McCaffrey.
Okay. And then Mitchell would be pretty interesting this week. Sure. All right. Wide
Maybe.
receiver.
I don't know if they're just going to plop him back in for 40% of the work first game back.
I'd say it'd be interesting. So I think that's vague enough where I'm going to be right no matter what.
I wouldn't start him, and I wouldn't use him in DFS. You know what? If he's activated, you'll start McCaffrey in your fantasy leagues, but you probably shouldn't use any 49ers running back in DFS.
Oh, that's such a tough thing.
Actually, I would completely disagree with that. I would gamble on one of them because that's how you win a tournament.
Great. Which one?
That's the question. Good luck. But
answer it.
You gamble on one, and if you hit, you win a tournament.
Oh, how about put in 3 different lineups, one with each guy?
That's probably the best way to do it. Yes.
But then you're going to have completely different lineups, right?
No.
Because McCaffrey costs so much more than the
No,
other.
one
non-McCaffrey.
Non-McCaffrey guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you could do that.
All right, let's talk wide receivers here. Deebo Samuel, he's been practicing in full.
He actually was downgraded.
That's annoying. Oh, you're right. I put it in my notes. He practiced in full on Wednesday. He was limited on Thursday.
Yeah.
So it's interesting for everyone, really, because that was the guy that was getting peppered with targets by Brock Purdy before he left with the injury. And you know what? We'll play that game when we get to the Arizona-San Francisco game. Devontae Parker practiced. He's missed 3 straight games with a concussion, so he's looking like he's on the right track. Jerry Jeudy limited. Traylon Burks missed practice. He may not play. That would be bad. They could use him. And Tyler Lockett missed practice. How confidently are you guys ranking Tyler Lockett this week?
Not very confident at all.
I think he's fine. I think what happened, he got kicked in the leg last week.
Got kicked in the leg and missing practice it's not normal for him, right? Usually he misses or is limited between his finger and the leg.
I think he's a good number 2 receiver this week.
That's probably where I'm going to land on him.
I have a fun theory about that game that I will share with you shortly. Tyler Higbee has an elbow injury. Hope he plays because he's got the best matchup in fantasy.
Catches a pass.
Yeah, he will. And both on the offensive line, both Saints offensive tackles are injured. So they might miss the game. And keep that in mind.
Yeah, that stinks.
Some key defense. Oh, I didn't get a Calais Campbell update. Did he practice yesterday? Do we know?
I'll check.
Because that's been a big one. Their run defense has gone in the tank, in the shin, since Calais Campbell.
He practiced in full on Thursday. So get that shin out of here.
Okay, that's a big deal. So if you're playing Mixon and DFS, this matchup just got tougher. Okay, how about Saints cornerback Paulson Adebo missed practice? If he can't play, Alontae Taylor will take his place. They've got.
I think I read that he's not playing.
Yeah, I think you're right. For Tampa Bay, Vita Vea, Carlton Davis, and Logan Ryan, 3 key players on defense. They all missed practice. Wouldn't be surprising to see them sit. And Washington, how about this? Jonathan Allen, their defensive tackle. When Jonathan Allen is on the field, they give up 3.8 yards per carry to running backs. When he's off the field, 5.3. So huge difference maker for them. He missed practice. Jamin Davis, starting linebacker, he missed practice. Safety Cameron Curl, he missed practice. So again, you might not see them against the Cowboys. All right. Oh, Xavier Howard, did he practice yesterday?
I believe Howard and Chubb I did see return to practice. I don't know what their status was. I'm going to guess limited.
Okay. One question for each game. The Rams are at the Seahawks. Seahawks, are you starting both Seattle wide receivers?
Yes.
Yes, Dave? Yes.
Yeah.
Would you like to hear my theory? You ready for my theory?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. So I watched the game film or the tape. DK Metcalf was not really shadowed by Ramsey. Saw a pretty decent amount of Ramsey. He had a huge game against the Rams. He had 8 catches, 127 yards, and a touchdown. 1 catch all game against Jalen Ramsey. It was an 8-yard catch with 40 seconds left to win the game. It was a thrilling game. And it was blanketed in coverage. Ramsey did a very good job on Metcalf. And there was a moment in that game. I don't know if you guys remember this. Metcalf is lined up on the right side across from Ramsey. He motions over to the left side, and Jalen Ramsey throws his hands up in the air like, yo, where are you going? They were really, really heated that game. I think Ramsey is going to lock him down. I'm not going to tell people to sit DK Metcalf, but I have a concern about DK Metcalf. I think this is going to be so personal for Jalen Ramsey. He's going to see a ton of him. He's going to lock him down because Metcalf really struggles against good cornerbacks. I think he's going to see a lot more of Ramsey this week than he did in the first matchup.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did you happen to see how often Ramsey has been following or shadowing a player, I should say, lately?
He did it with Sutton.
He did. Yeah, he's been doing it more, I think, more recently. Let's see. Not with Mike Williams. Remember he did in the first half with Christian Watson, and Watson had no catches, and then not so much in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I don't know that, but this feels so personal to me, and I think it's more of like a DFS thing. Like it made me more excited about Lockett, but I could see a bad game for Metcalf. But he did light them up last game. All right, Detroit at Green Bay. How many running backs are you confidently starting? And how many wide receivers are you confidently starting for Detroit at Green Bay? Dave?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
You're confident in Jamal Williams?
Yes.
Dylan?
Yes. This week, yes.
Christian Watson?
Yes.
Yeah, just because of lack of options? Okay.
Yes.
Jamie, how do you feel about that?
Dillon and Williams are risky. They're going to need to score touchdowns. So they're number 2 running backs because of the week, but I don't feel confident in them. I hope Watson is okay because he's still been limited in practice with the hip injury, but I would start him. He's the only Packers receiver I would start with confidence. And Amon-Ra St. Brown is the only Lions receiver I would start with confidence. I think DJ Shark's going to struggle. So like Goff, like Rodgers, like Watson, like Jones, like Swift, but no confidence in A.J. Dillon or Jamal Williams by any stretch.
All right. Arizona at San Francisco. Oh, no.
Williams had a pretty miserable game the first time these two teams met. 24 for 81. So
that's pretty bad against the Packers. Dallas at Washington. Start them all, sit them all.
Was Rashawn Gary playing then? I think he was. He was there for that game. Which game are you talking about now?
Dallas at Washington. Start them all, sit them all.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I think Dotson and McLaurin are still number 3 receivers.
Arizona at San Francisco. Start all Niners, sit all Cardinals.
Marquise Brown, I think, is worth using in 3 receiver leagues, and so is Greg Dortch.
I like Trey McBride in PPR.
More than like Dortch and
Yes.
Marquise Brown at their positions?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, that's a bold call, Dave.
Thank you.
Wow, he won good game.
I know. It was with this quarterback. They've
Yeah.
probably done a lot of work together. This
All right.
quarterback is not very good, but throwing short passes to a
I don't
big
know that
target
they've
who's
done a lot of work together. Right? I mean, it's not like he's
McBride's been with the starters the majority of the season, or the second half of the season.
Carolina at New Orleans. Any interest in Chris Olave or Rashid Shaheed?
Very much so. Love Chris Olave this week. The odds for Rookie of the Year suggest he still has a chance to win it. And so if he goes out and has a big game, he may remind people that he was probably the front runner for a good portion of the season based on how the numbers were trending for him at the beginning of the year. So great matchup, unbelievable matchup. And so Shaheed, I think, is also in play. He's been the better of the two down the stretch because of health. So based on opportunity, I think both guys have a chance to finish strong. But I think Olave is going to have one of those, hey, remember me games.
Who is the front runner for Rookie of the Year?
I think the odds had it for Kenneth Walker, which makes sense because, team in playoff contention, how he's performed. But it's really, I think, wide open. Garrett Wilson's still within range. You can make a case for some guys that had good pockets of seasons. Breece Hall at the beginning of the year. I think even Brock Purdy at the end of the year. It's usually body of work, and so I think Kenneth Walker's just overall numbers probably make the most sense. But again, I think Olave or and Christian Watson too, his pockets of season. But I think it's going to be between Olave, Wilson, and Walker.
Minnesota at Chicago. Start them all, sit them all.
It's hard to bench David Montgomery completely.
Sure.
But in that Jamal Williams low end number 2 running back range.
Mm-hmm.
Are you feeling it?
No.
Tampa Bay.
I'm feeling it when it comes to Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
I think he bounces back in a major way.
Tampa Bay at Atlanta. Are Tyler Algier and Drake London the best starts in this game?
Yes.
Algier for sure. I mean, you can make a case Patterson might be better than London. But
Right, if they just run it.
I think London's worth using.
So you'd start London over Godwin and Evans?
Yeah, you have to.
Giants and Eagles. Start them all, sit them all?
Yes.
Pretty much.
Okay.
We had a good talk about expectations for Jalen Hurts on HQ on Thursday. And whether or not, what do you expect from Jalen Hurts? And maybe we could talk about that when we get to the game later.
No, that's the last game we're going to do. So I think it's too important of a topic. So I think it's a good call. Let's talk about it right now. Your expectations for Jalen Hurts against the Giants team that's likely going to be resting its starters.
I think they'll be able to do whatever they want, and I think he can put up a really good stat line in like 3 quarters of play. I'm not thinking too hard about this. If I used Minshew the last 2 weeks and I've got Hurts, I'm not going to run to the waiver wire and plug in Brock Purdy or someone like that over Jalen Hurts. It comes down to people that have like Hurts and Trevor Lawrence or Hurts and Geno. What do you do with those guys? And I'm going to start Hurts. I don't think it's going to be a situation where all he does is hand off for 3 quarters.
See, I would agree with the last statement, and I'm going to start Hurts, but I would not be surprised if it's just we get our win and we get 2 weeks off until we have to make sure he's 100%, because clearly he's still dealing with something. You know, he's not practicing in full. You're still hearing, whether it's coach speak or not, you know, Nick Sirianni say we're going to make sure he's 100%, blah blah blah. So I would not be surprised if, because the Giants are resting guys, that we build a 14-point lead after a quarter and a half. All right, Jalen, you've done your job. Like what happened with the Jaguars last week, you know, where they're up big and the defense is dominating and all those things unfold. And he does not have a big stat line. So you have him, he starts, you start him, unless you just feel so confident in whoever's been replacing him. So if it's Minshew, clearly you go to Hurts. But, you know, if you've been riding Brock Purdy and you think Brock Purdy's 20 is better than maybe the 30 that Hurts gives you, or the 4 like Trevor Lawrence gave you last week, it could go either way. So it's just a matter of where you're at with your team. But I think just the overall sentiment should be is if Jalen Hurts plays, you just take the chance on him being Jalen Hurts.
You want to tell me who you have ranked ahead of him?
He's top 5 for me with the hope that he's Jalen Hurts.
Would you start Cousins?
It's Allen, Mahomes, Burrow, and that's basically it.
That's it for me too.
I might put Lawrence ahead of him.
Okay,
but that's kind of where I'm at.
All right. Okay. Now we'll take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about all the games. Remember, we have a 2023 question for each game, and then we'll get into week 18 questions for each game. So we'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. We'll start with the Rams and the Seahawks here. 2023 question. This is a little bit tougher one than what I usually do. How many players on these two teams, the Rams and the Seahawks, are drafted in the top 48 picks, top 4 rounds in 2023?
Neither of the quarterbacks. Walker for sure. Kupp for sure. Metcalf for sure. I'm going to say 3.
Akers is going to now be a top 4 round pick.
He might get there.
But if why Metcalf and not Lockett? You know, it's
because he's younger.
Well, once upon a time, somebody once said you had to be a certain height to be a number 1 receiver in fantasy.
I don't think I said that. Heath. I'm not saying Heath said that. I'm saying what Jamie just pulled a Heath there. But okay. So 3 for Dave, 3 for Dave, 4 for Jamie. Players drafted in the first 4 rounds on the Rams and the Seahawks. All right, stat of the game. The Seahawks have allowed 52 yards or a touchdown to a tight end in 13 of 16 games. This is the best matchup for tight end. Starter sit Tyler Higbee.
I would start him, but you know what the risks are.
I mean, I think you get a Tyler Conklin game at worst, because that's kind of what he was giving you in the early part of the season. So 6 for 60 is well within the range of possibilities for him. But yeah, it's a Seahawks defense that just lost Jordan Brooks on top of it. So,
True.
You know, there's a lot to like about Higbee and Akers this week based on their matchups.
Would you start Higbee or Dalton Schultz?
Higbee.
I have Schultz higher.
Higbee or Darren Waller?
Waller.
Higbee. Higbee and PPR, Waller none.
Okay. I guess we'll stick with the Rams then. Cam Akers slam dunk start this week.
Windmill jam.
Yeah. Is it the shoes? He's top 13 in both formats for all of our analysts. Sit the Rams wide receivers and Baker Mayfield, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Geno Smith. Like him, love him. What do you think?
Like him a lot. Even if Ramsey erases DK Metcalf, he can find his way to that 20 to 22 fantasy point range, and he might be able to do better than that. That's what he did against this Rams defense the last time they played competitive game. You saw it, Adam.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was the Rams' first game without Aaron Donald. I believe they still pressured him a lot. And at that point in the year, I was nervous that Geno Smith was not good when he had to deal with pressure. He dealt with pressure in this game. He had a huge game. Seattle's playing for something. Rams aren't. I think Geno's a top 10 quarterback.
Yeah, the only thing that's bothering me is he's thrown for 238, 215, and 183 yards in his last 3 games. You know, he really was very quiet against the Jets after the first quarter. Struggled against the Niners. What was the game in between? The Chiefs. Yeah, I thought he played well, but just didn't really have good numbers.
Well,
but
the Chiefs was the weather game.
It was cold. It wasn't like bad weather, but yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's
a lot of work for Walker in those games too. So that's something you could be a little concerned about, is that do they continue to feed the rookie? And that's just a huge part of their game plan.
And it could be the push to get him rookie of the year too.
Would you start Geno Smith or Brock Purdy?
Smith.
Geno.
All right.
I think the floor is similar. The floor for Geno is basically the ceiling for Purdy.
Right. Yep.
Start Ken Walker, and you guys like both Seahawks wide receivers here. So, in this kind of week, what are you going to get away from these guys? No way. And by the way, the Rams are like 26th against wide receivers or something, 24th against wide receivers. A little bit better recently, but okay. Noah Fant. Any interest in Noah Fant?
No, they actually seem to be using Colby Parkinson a little bit more last week. And Fant, I wonder just how healthy he is. He's been playing through this knee injury. So touchdown or bust, as he always is. And, I think you kind of know what you're getting if he doesn't score.
I'll walk down the aisle with McBride before Fant.
That's cute.
Thank you.
Detroit at Green Bay, 2023 question. Aaron Jones or DeAndre Swift?
That's a good one.
Jones.
I think Jones is probably the safer answer.
Yeah. I'm going to really be concerned about the Lions if Ben Johnson gets a head coaching job and leaves, because he's been fantastic for this team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he really has. That was like the immediate turnaround for Amon-Ra St. Brown and for everyone, really. That was 2021. He took over midseason, and things have been a lot better for them offensively since. So the Green Bay defense, in their last 4 games, they have faced the Bears, Rams, the Dolphins, and the Vikings. And none of those teams scored more than 20 points. So, Jamie, how do you view this matchup for Detroit? Is this a good matchup? Because that's how we had been viewing Green Bay. But they've stepped up their defense recently.
They absolutely have. And, it's a credit to their turnaround. So I think just in terms of where both teams are at, you're hoping that the Lions offense, and, I don't want to really reference last week's game because that was a track meet for them against a bad team in their building. I'd like to more reference the game before where they were outdoors against the Panthers defense. It's kind of similar, in terms of yardage that they give up, production that they give up, and how they give it up. So, I think you can have success throwing on the Packers. So I think that Goff will find a way to get Amon-Ra St. Brown his numbers, because you avoid Alexander that way. And what he's been doing, which has been a tight end each week. Zylstra 2 games ago. Last week was Brock Wright. So someone else will give him some support. Maybe it's Jameson Williams. You've heard, I think it was Ben Johnson talking about that this week, that they thought his development would be a little bit further along. Not that they're upset, but they thought he'd be a little bit further along in the process from a rehab standpoint. So maybe it's Jameson Williams this week. Maybe it's just the running backs. I'm not quite sure, but I think Goff will find a way to be productive. The running backs concern me from a running standpoint, because the Packers, while their yards per carry is not exactly great, they've still been very good at stopping running backs lately. So can both guys have success? I like what I saw from Swift last week, mostly without Justin Jackson there, so more time on the field, and that's always a plus for him anytime that happens. So Swift is safe number 2 running back. Williams got to score. He's not going for 144 yards like he did last week. That's impossible for him against his defense. So I think it's Williams touchdown or bust. Swift feels safe, especially if Jackson's out. And then Goff and Amon St. Brown are pretty safe to me.
Is it bad that I'm not giving the Packers a ton of credit for what's happened for their defense the last couple of games? Against Minnesota, the Vikings were sliding all over the field. Like, the very first thing the Lions need to do is make sure they have the right cleats on for the game, because for whatever reason, the Vikings just could not get their footing, and it was almost collectively. And then they lost 2 offensive linemen on top of it. And like, just things fell apart for them. So I don't know how much of that is truly the Packers defense playing great. And then the week before they were in Miami, Tua took a hit. He seemed off in the second half. In the first half, the Dolphins were putting up points on the Packers. So I don't know what to really make of this Packers defense. But what I do know is that the Lions are going to play hard no matter what Seattle does. And I would imagine that they're just going to kind of use DeAndre Swift more than they have, because the game is like, well, this is it. Last game of the year, or we're going to the playoffs. So I think Swift is a good running option this week. I would use him as a number 2. I agree with using him over Williams. Williams does have to score, but I think they cling to that run game a little bit. I think that they find that the run game, I don't think they're going to put it on Goff's shoulders and try and turn it into a shootout. I think they're going to run it a lot, and I think they're going to use their running backs a lot.
Okay. So how would you rank the running backs? Jones, Swift, 1, 2?
Yeah.
I like, in non-PPR and in PPR, Jones, Dillon, Swift, Jamal Williams.
Okay. So that's interesting. So you have more faith in Dillon than Jamie does.
Yes. I mean, he's been good. He's scoring. I know you don't want to trust somebody as a touchdown or bust type
you
of
kind of like
but
Jamal
I think
Williams, isn't he?
that.
I mean, he's become
only scores.
He's catching the ball. They can use him in
the last 2 weeks, not as much,
but they can. So I'm rather confident in Dillon, and I think it's a lock that he scores.
So yeah, last week he did not have a catch. The week before that he had 2 catches. The 3 weeks before that he had 3 in each game.
Yeah, pencil him in for like 3.
Yeah, he's been 11 to 12 carries, 3 straight games. He's probably not going to have more than that. I mean, he had an 18 carry game against the Bears. That was a game that Aaron Jones left with an injury. But then again, he had 11 carries against the Rams when he left with an injury, and A.J. Dillon left with an injury. But I don't know, maybe 12 carries. It's very similar to Jamal Williams with more catch potential. All right, as far as the Packers passing, well, okay, actually, the Goff rankings are interesting because last I checked, Jamie had Goff like 6 and Dave 14. No, Dave 8 for Jamie, 14 for Goff. So why don't you guys talk about both quarterbacks? Who do you like better here? Jamie, first word.
Of the 2?
Yeah.
Oh, Goff. He's been a better fantasy quarterback all season long. So, again, I think you look at – I expect the Packers offense to show up here. So I expect, Rodgers to have a good game. So that's kind of been the scenario for Goff, is when he has to throw, he's been successful at it. So I trust him. I think he's going to have, again, showed you the last time he was outdoors, he could put up numbers in this type of scenario. So to me, there's much higher ceiling for Jared Goff because that's been the case for the entire year. So I'm not going to change anything for 1 week.
He put up great numbers against a depleted secondary last time he was outdoors. This is a different situation, and I think it's a better secondary than the Panthers.
Agreed.
Than what he had. I'm walking right down narrative street. Aaron Rodgers at home, playoff game on the line, and he's against the Lions, whose secondary has been terrible all year. I think Rodgers, whose numbers perked when Watson was okay, and when Watson really came on in the middle of the year, seems like Watson's healthier now. He's been practicing all week. He played 60% of the snaps last week. That was a surprise. I'm taking Rodgers over Goff. I think that he's got the chance to put up better fantasy numbers.
Rodgers had some great matchups recently.
Yeah,
it's been terrible.
It's such a shame. It's not like he's playing poorly.
No, and even when Watson's been good, even when Watson's been good, he hasn't put up big numbers.
Yeah. Well, A.J. Dillon's, they're starting to get near the goal line. They all year long, they had not been making trips inside the 5-yard line, whatever. And no, they were getting very few rushing touchdowns. Now they're like a running team now. So he's had the Dolphins and the Vikings the last 2 weeks and the Bears 4 weeks ago, and total fantasy duds for Aaron Rodgers, but not like he's playing so poorly. He's just not putting up numbers.
Yeah. I mean, even in the dream matchup against Tennessee, 23 points. His high for the season is 24.
Yeah. Okay. So how about would you start a quarterback in this game, or I'll just go back to Brock Purdy?
Rodgers. Right now I have Rodgers, Purdy, Goff. I don't know if I'm going to stick with Purdy over Goff.
Goff, few spaces, Rodgers, right behind Rodgers, Purdy. Purdy's been a better fantasy quarterback than Rodgers, which is just amazing to say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then your
And Purdy
confidence.
gets the Cardinals. That's a layup too.
Yeah, unless they just run the ball like crazy. But even then, you know,
I wonder if they pull Purdy at some point.
They might.
He could still probably put up 20 points in like 3 quarters against Arizona, couldn't he?
I would think so.
I would too.
How many Packers?
I'm all in on Rodgers. I think he's going to have his best game of the year.
All right. So how many Packers wide receivers do you have in your top 24?
I think I only have the one, but Lazard is a flex for me.
When was the last time Lazard scored a touchdown?
Probably 2021. Obviously, it was earlier this year.
Yeah, before the Watson breakout.
Yeah, I'm 27th. I'm 27th.
Okay.
I'm good with Lazard as a flex. PPR.
I think we're good with that game. So would you start Christian Watson or Keenan Allen and Mike Williams?
Allen, Watson, Williams.
And what is the scenario where the Chargers are playing for nothing? If the
Ravens
Bengals win?
If
Bengals win, Ravens lose, they're locked into the 5. And I almost think that they're probably not going to play their starters all game, no matter what.
They're talking about the Chargers.
Yes, the Chargers.
Okay. All right, next up, Dallas at Washington. 2023 question. What is the highest that you could see yourself ranking Tony Pollard at running back?
Round 1.
I mean, right now he's 11th for me with the hope that Zeke is gone and he stays. Remember, he's a free agent, so they have to re-sign him too. And I did read a story that suggested Dallas's best course of action is to say goodbye to both of them and go cheap at the position. Which, if you think about their history, is not that out of the question because remember, they ran DeMarco Murray into the ground and then said goodbye. So as much as Jerry loves Zeke, I'd see that hard to come by. You know, they may try and re-sign him to a cheaper deal if they, restructure his contract. But if Pollard stays and Zeke leaves, Pollard is going to be a top 10 running back for me.
Yeah, but if Zeke leaves and Pollard stays, Pollard's going to be like RB3 or something for me. Top 5, I would say. I don't know how you see it.
Yeah.
I mean, I am concerned about his workload. He had a quote from his running backs coach while Zeke was injured saying, well, we'd like to keep him around the 30 snap number. We want him to stay fresh.
Mm-hmm. You're going back to earlier in the season.
It was not that early in the season. It was when Zeke was hurt.
You're right.
Like 5
Well,
weeks
we had a CBS game where, the guy that comes on with us, Tom Spencer, who calls games with Jim Nantz and Tony Romo. So he's in the coaches meetings and probably similar conversation where at the time, Zeke was still healthy, but because they were using Pollard as a receiver or in a receiving role a little bit more, they didn't want him, and the way that Tom explained it to us was he's running routes downfield, having to come back to the line of scrimmage, and just that whole process, they felt they didn't want to just run him into the ground that way because of the role he was playing then. So who knows, more traditional running back. Can he handle consistent work, 20 plus touches? There'll be somebody else with him, so they won't go with Pollard in the old Zeke role where, it was just Zeke all the time. So whether it's Malik Davis or somebody else that they bring in the story that I read in terms of letting both guys go, it was that the Cowboys really like Malik Davis. So, somebody you might want to consider in dynasty leagues if you still make ad drops. I think, Pollard, like you said, Adam, he's got top 5 upside. I would probably just be a little bit more cautious and say top 10.
Okay. So by the way, people are asking about game of the week. I'm not going to do game of the week. This is not a joke to trick Dave. Decided last week was
sure.
Yeah, last week was Bills Bengals. I'm just not ready to do that. So I'll take another week to think about how I can trick Dave during the playoffs, and we'll get back into the singing groove next week.
So it's coming up before the show ends.
I swear to you, it's not happening.
No, we discussed this. We're not doing it.
Not going to do it this week.
I like how it's a we thing now.
Yeah, it's true.
Now it's the two of you ganging up on me.
Conspiracy here. All right, so Dak Prescott. What do you guys think about Dak this week? No, I don't know. Jamie, how do you feel about Dak?
I think Dak's a safe start. He's playing. This Commanders defense is just not, I think, as good as the numbers suggest in opposing quarterbacks. The thing that Dak's got to do is stop the turnovers. My God. It's I think it's 6 interceptions in his last 5 games and a fumble. It's just been maybe it's even 8 interceptions. It's just been bad to watch some of the silly throws that he makes. And so they have a chance. They could be the 1 seed. I mean, it's a lot of crazy things have to happen. Giants have to beat the Eagles. 49ers have to lose, so but they could also still, if Giants somehow pull off an upset, they could still be the NFC East champion. I think they play all out, and Dak has an opportunity for another good strong performance.
10 interceptions in his last 6 games.
Yikes.
Right, so it's 8 in his last 5.
But
so
he's still throwing the ball well. It's just these weird decisions that he's making.
Give me a ranking of Goff, Rodgers, Dak.
Dak, Rodgers, Goff.
Dak, Goff, skip a few, Rodgers.
Okay. So let's just simplify things here. Start Pollard, start Zeke, start Lamb. No interest in Hilton or Gallup or anything, right?
No.
Schultz is interesting because Pollard's back.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, if it was a coincidence, I'm not sure, but it kind of makes sense to me that they're sort of intertwined here. So like Schultz, love Schultz, begrudgingly start Schultz, Dave. What are you thinking?
It's almost like begrudgingly start Schultz. And I feel that way about a lot of tight ends that aren't ranked in my top 5. So I think he's got a chance to still see some good target volume. The lesson I learned from last week is that he's still a prime candidate to get the ball in the red zone. And I don't think that's going to change this week. I think he still sees 1 or 2 red zone targets and hopefully turns one of them into a touchdown.
All right. And on the Commander side of the ball, what are we thinking about the running back situation here? If Brian Robinson, they have lost their last 2 games by 14 or more points, and he has had 22 and 24 carries in both of those games. We don't even know if he's going to play, though. So, Jamie, what do you think about the Commanders running backs?
If Robinson plays, he is a flex in non-PPR leagues, somebody I would like to avoid in half and full PPR because despite all these carries, he's not catching the ball, which was frustrating because prior to the 2-game stretch, he had started to get 2 catches a game. Gibson is obviously not playing. He was placed on IR yesterday. So Jonathan Williams would be the next man up. I think if it's Jonathan Williams without Robinson or without Gibson, or now without Gibson, he is a flex play in PPR, but I would try to avoid him altogether.
Yeah, at least somebody to know for DFS. And then, Jamie, you said the McLaurin and Dotson would be number 3 guys for you?
Yeah, I think you look at the situation is a little concerning because of Sam Howell. It's a wild card, so we don't know who he's going to lean on. Heath has noted this the last month since Dotson has been back. His target share has been better than Terry McLaurin's. So is this a rookie to rookie thing, where we could see Dotson still continuing to get more opportunities? It's a good defense. Obviously, it's been a little leaky secondary of late. So I think that's why you hope that there's some production here, plus the garbage time potential. I would think if they are going to rest guys, you're resting McLaurin as opposed to resting Dotson. That's true. You can make a case that Dotson is better. And so, again, I don't want to put a lot of stock into completely running away from these guys, but, they are not must-start guys by any stretch.
Do you know about any incentives, like bonuses or anything like that for McLaurin?
For McLaurin? No, he just got his deal, so I would assume it's probably not.
So he doesn't have any extra incentives on top of it? Okay. Because I think that's the only reason why McLaurin should play in the game.
Okay, guys, let's go to Arizona at San Francisco. 2023 question. Did you consider James Conner as a top 12 running back? He is currently RB10 per game in PPR. He will be 28 years old in 2023.
No, but who's the coach? When is Murray back? I heard some thought, which would make sense, that if they're going to do a rebuild, maybe trade Hopkins and get value while he's still producing.
You can almost see that one coming.
So, we'll see. Probably, I shouldn't say probably. New general manager, new coach, a lot of changes coming in Arizona. And even maybe Connor, they might move on from him too. So I think he'll end up being a good value pick again, because we'll downgrade him and we'll see. But, at least this regime was pretty clear that they didn't want to make him the featured guy going into the season because they wanted to add somebody else.
This will be the 4th straight season that James Conner is behind an offensive line that ranks 31st or 32nd in run blocking.
Wow.
That is some bad luck.
And look how he's done with it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you could look at his yards per carry. He just doesn't seem like a great running back, but maybe he has had, I'm wrong. It's his 3rd straight season. 3rd straight. Maybe he has
that changes everything.
the worst situation. 1 year with Pittsburgh, 2 with Arizona. On to this game here. Where would you rank James Conner if he does play in this game? He did manage to score. He had 14 carries, 42 yards, and a touchdown, 2 catches for 12 yards against the Niners in Week 11 in a 38-10 loss. So you got to hope he scores. But where would you rank Conner if he plays in this game?
It's such a brutal matchup, and it's David Blau, and just an angry. The 49ers defense has to just be so pissed off after almost blowing that game last week to Jared Stidham. So I think he's still starting. He's still number 2 running back. I'd start him ahead of Jamal Williams, for example, and AJ Dillon, for example, just because of their setups. But yeah, he's probably like 17, 18 in that range.
Yep. Back half of the RB2s.
Okay. And how about Greg Dortch or Marquise Brown? Who would you start?
I'd start Brown. Brown was not bad last week. 6 for 68, I think it was.
6 for 61 on 9 targets.
Yeah. So, you're telling me 9 targets for him and 10 targets for Dortch, and one guy was successful, one guy's not, and the pedigree is certainly much better for Marquise Brown. But they're similar. They're both number 3 receivers with a lot of upside. This 49ers defense is giving up a lot of production receivers. So they're going to be throwing a lot in this game, and probably a lot of garbage time.
Jamie, a lot. I'm sorry to cut you off. 2nd most yards to slot receivers. So I thought that was really interesting. So how would you guys rank the Commanders receivers and the Cardinals receivers?
Right now I have the Commanders guys ahead, but it's close.
Okay. Dave likes Trey McBride. Where do you have him ranked?
15.
Okay. No, not that much. Brock Purdy is right around 12th for everybody. Just pencil him in for 20 points?
Yep.
All right. And if McCaffrey doesn't play, if McCaffrey doesn't play, who's your highest ranked running back? Let's say first scenario is they do not activate Elijah Mitchell. Then what, Dave?
Jordan Mason.
And he'd be where for you?
He would be probably right in that same range, if not a little bit ahead of where we'd put James Conner, or where I'd put James Conner. So middle of the pack, number 2 fantasy running back.
And then if Mitchell is activated and McCaffrey,
I'll still like Mason better. He'll be a little lower, but still a number 2 fantasy running back.
Jamie, tell me how you're approaching the San Francisco wide receivers with the possibility of Deebo Samuel coming back.
Deebo comes back. I think they're both low-end number 2 receivers. No Deebo. Ayuk is almost the top 15 guy. And I would go just the running back question. If Mitchell plays, he'd be my favorite running back.
Okay. And George Kittle, would you start him? Would you still start him if Deebo Samuel played?
Yes.
Who are you going to put over him?
Higbee, Knox.
It's
Knox,
Arizona.
I might be able to.
Destroys Arizona all the time.
Yeah. And Deebo played in the first meeting, and Kittle had 4 catches, 84 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But in 10 games where that Kittle has played with Deebo and Ayuk, and this is something you should remember for next year, 10 games he's played with Deebo and Ayuk, he has fewer than 30 yards in 6 of the 10 games. He has 3 touchdowns in those 10 games.
He has 5 touchdowns in his last 3. I think Purdy is forming a bond.
Carolina is at New Orleans. 2023 question: DJ Moore or Chris Olave next year?
Ooh. Who's the quarterback in Carolina?
I'm going to say it's Sam Darnold. He's doing enough.
And DJ Moore is a superstar. Who's the quarterback in New Orleans?
Oh, I don't have a clue.
Derek Carr? Dennis Allen connection?
Maybe. We're doing a draft in a week, or not even, right?
Right.
So,
who are you taking first
Olave
between those two?
I'm going to take Olave.
I think they both have a lot of upside. I'd be excited to take both. Pencil me in for Moore as of this moment.
Okay, Moore or Olave in this game, week 18?
Moore. But I like both.
Same.
Sam Darnold, Heath moved down a little bit to 15th, 21st for Jamie, 18th.
That was crazy. Top 12.
He also moved down Montgomery. Did he move down ETN? I think he moved down Montgomery. Maybe not, actually. Who did he move down?
He's
No.
so mad at you yesterday.
Moved down someone. Not ETN. Maybe he's moving down one spot. Whatever. Sorry. Kamara. No, he has him 9th. Who else did we debate yesterday? George? No, it still has him 20th. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was just Arnold. Okay. Are you starting or sitting the Carolina running backs?
I don't want. I mean, it's
right.
not an easy matchup.
Look,
the reason to like Darnold is you expect the run game to struggle, and they're throwing a lot, and so.
But it is a good matchup. I mean, isn't this the weakness of the Saints? They have a terrible run defense and a good pass defense.
I mean, I don't know if their run defense is that bad.
I mean, per carry, they're really bad. 4.5 yards per carry. Foreman, Deontay Foreman, when they're 5-5 since Foreman became the lead running back. In the 5 wins, he has rushed for 118, 130, 113, 74, and 165 yards.
And how many carries?
15, 31, 24, 21, 21.
Right.
The losses, he has one game with more than 13 carries. So talk about game script dependent, but it's also like he makes the game script kind of. Is he going to run well? No. I understand you can't really trust him. He catches no passes. You need him to score. We like DJ Moore. Andy Dalton's an interesting flyer. You guys have him in the top 15. And
it has to do with the matchup.
Yeah.
The only concern I have with Dalton is A, how much is he coming off the field for Taysom Hill? And B, is he going to Andy Dalton? So it's not the setup that he typically struggles in, which is primetime or a big game. He's, poor man's Kirk Cousins in that regard. And so it's a meaningless game. It might be his last start ever. And so, we'll see how he takes advantage of it. But if he loses opportunities to score because of Taysom Hill, which we know happens quite a bit, then he's not going to have a great fantasy day.
I got a third option or a third problem with Dalton. And you mentioned it earlier, Adam, the offensive tackles being beat up for New Orleans. If they're on backup tackles for this game, even against Carolina's pass rush is pretty good. Brian Burns is awesome.
Secondaries are so bad.
I know. But the first step in stopping a quarterback is by getting to him. Pass rush is more important. Dalton versus Goff is going to be one that I wrestle with over the next 48 hours.
Would you guys
Goff is so much better.
Start
in normal situations, I would agree, but the matchup for Dalton is so good.
Would you guys start Rashid Shaheed or a Commanders or Cardinals receiver?
Shaheed.
Definitely starting Shaheed over the Cardinals guys. I probably am going to start Shaheed over the Commanders guys too.
Okay, Kamara. We got to talk Kamara here. So you guys are kind of low on him. He's still got him in the top 12, but you guys have him 18th-ish. So James Conner, if he plays, or Kamara?
Conner and PPR, Kamara none.
Really?
Yeah,
I guess that's about right. Yeah, Kamara's not catching the ball as much. Yeah, Kamara makes me nervous. Don't know how much he'll be asked to do. Meaningless game. How much does he even play? Taysom Hill's been taking from him too.
Yeah, in the last 3 games, Kamara and Taysom Hill both have 2 carries inside the 5-yard line. And 1 touchdown. So it's not Kamara's role, unfortunately. It's a split there. Would you start Kamara or Miles Sanders?
I have Kamara higher.
Oh, Sanders.
Kamara or A.J. Dillon?
Dillon.
Kamara.
And the tight ends, Juwan Johnson or Taysom Hill? Who you starting?
Taysom in 9.5, Johnson and PPR.
Taysom across the board.
Interesting. All right. I mean, Juwan Johnson's starting to come alive a little bit. His last 2 games that weren't the Cleveland game, that was a terrible weather game, 62 yards and 67 yards. 2 touchdowns.
He led him in targets last week too.
7 targets last week.
He should be higher for me.
Taysom is AJ Dillon. He is Jamal Williams. He is touchdown or bust. If he does not score, you're going to be disappointed.
Minnesota is at Chicago. Your 2023 question. the same exact thing I asked about James Conner, basically. Did Dalvin Cook make your top 12 at running back? He's currently RB12 per game in PPR. Connor's RB10. And he, just like Connor, will be 28 years old in 2023. Did Dalvin Cook make your top 12 at running back?
He didn't make mine.
No.
He's just outside.
Yeah. Seems like just more and more concerns. Right? Like the workload was lower this year. For a passing team now.
Well, I mean, and now you have an offensive line that's going to be a little weaker next year because O'Neal's going to be, probably a little limited to start the season. So, yeah, I would not be surprised if there's another running back brought in or they re-sign Madison.
All right. I think the next 3 games are pretty easy, right? Minnesota, Chicago, Tampa Bay, Atlanta, Eagles, Giants. But anything, Dave, you want to say about Minnesota, Chicago that's not incredibly obvious in terms of who to start and sit?
No.
Like Montgomery or Kamara?
Kamara.
Montgomery or Jamal Williams?
I think I'll probably go with Montgomery over Jamal Williams.
Vikings DST. Anybody starting them?
Top 5.
It's Nathan Peterman. I think you have to.
Well, they're so bad though.
They are
the worst defense in football.
So is Peterman though. I mean, look what you're talking about here. You're talking about a defense. First off, an offense that had trouble scoring for the last 3 weeks with Justin Fields.
Yeah.
And so now you're putting Peterman there with no receivers, terrible offensive line. Vikings have everything to play for if they want to. And so, yeah, I'm going to trust the Vikings.
Well, they don't really have anything to play for
if they want to.
If they want to, but they don't have to. But
do worry about the Vikings being up 24-0 in the third quarter, and then they put in their backups.
Yeah.
And the Bears score 14 points in Basura time.
Well, I'm worried about that with Cousins. I'm not going to sit Jefferson.
I wonder though if they're going to try and get Jefferson the record.
Yep. But he needs almost 200 yards
on one drive. 2 drives.
I don't think he can do it on 1, but he can do it on 3.
How about Kmet? Would you start Kmet? Like, how would you compare him to the Saints guys?
Oh, behind now.
Yeah, I think so.
If it was Fields, I think he had top 10 upside. Without Fields, I'm not trusting.
All right. And Tampa Bay is at Atlanta. Your 2023 question. Do you feel good about any Tampa Bay players going into next season? Let's say Brady comes back. Do you feel good about any of them going into next year?
Sure.
Yeah.
I feel good about Godwin.
Yeah. I don't know if I feel good about anyone other than Godwin, though. They're like an aging team.
I would feel good about Rachaad White if they let Leonard Fournette go.
Yep.
See that?
There's sleeper appeal with Cade Otton. He'd be a late round pick, worth a flyer. But I think Godwin, year after coming back from the ACL, I think he's got a shot to rebound into a receiver that gets averages north of 15 PPR points. He didn't do that this year. I think he can do that next year.
But that's
I think he can do that with a different quarterback too.
If they hit the reset button, then it could be bad for him.
I think he can do that with an average quarterback. Because what do you ask him to do? What are you asking Chris Godwin to do that's different from before?
I mean, there aren't many quarterbacks that lean on slot receivers like Tom Brady does.
I mean, he was the number 2 receiver in fantasy with Jameis Winston, but that was a year where they threw the ball a million times. Yeah, it was Arians. I think if Brady comes back and he has his tackles and a good offensive line and he has Godwin and Evans, I'm going to draft him. He's going to be a sleeper. I'm going to draft him as a number 2 quarterback. But I don't
think you'll get the chance. I think someone will take him as a starter.
Let's say Brady comes back and they're healthy. Would you draft Brady or Geno Smith?
Brady, more upside.
I think it's Brady.
Atlanta running backs in this game. How could we not just love Tyler Algier?
They do.
Start of the week, double dip.
No, but he's 100 yards away from 1,000, so I hope they give him the opportunity to do that. And, you have, like you said, Vita Vea may not play, and this run defense, as great as it was last week, it, may not be as interested because they have nothing to play for. So hopefully those are some of the guys they pull back, defensive line, linebackers, etc. So I think what the Falcons are going to do. They're going to run, and run more. So Algier's in a pretty good spot.
Did he? Okay, Patterson missed the first meeting. Did Algier get featured in that game? Yeah, 13 carries, 45 yards. Oh, and Patterson is what, a flex?
Yeah.
Yes.
Drake London is
low end
number
number
2 receiver
3.
in PPR, number 3 now.
I think he might be number 3 all the way around.
He's had 8 or more targets in 4 straight games. I'm not expecting Carlton Davis to play at this point.
Correct.
I can see. I think he's a great DFS play, at least on FanDuel. It's very cheap.
Agreed.
All right. That's it, right? Yeah. Like you just can't.
Yeah, London's the best receiver in this game.
Can't start a buck.
That I agree with.
Giants and Eagles 2023 question. You can start your fantasy team with either one of these 2 pairs. Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts, or Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. Which pair do you choose?
Where's Barkley playing?
Are you talking about like your first 2 picks?
No,
Or
just you're going
I get
into a
these
draft.
2 guys
Yeah.
before. Like these are my keepers.
Yeah, these are your keepers. Barkley and Hurts, Smith and Brown.
It's Barkley and Hurts.
Smith and Brown for me.
It's not, I can't believe you said it with such certainty.
Well, you're talking about a top 5 fantasy running back and a top 5 fantasy quarterback versus 2 receivers on the same team.
It might be top 10 in everyone's rankings.
They were pretty close.
Top 12.
They're going to be up there. There's no question. They're both awesome. But I'd rather have the top 5 running back and the stud quarterback. I can find the receivers. Man, I sound like the same ass man that I've been my whole life.
It's the way you said
So
that.
wait a minute. So
That's
I want to
really-
know what made it such an easy answer for you, Jamie?
I mean, PPR, I'm going to take the receivers.
But this is negative PPR, though. This is
Negative PPR? Then I
losing
will
half a point.
pass on both pairs.
I mean, are you nervous about Saquon slowing down? They're
Yeah,
both top
look,
15 for me.
Any
the receiver.
player at this position coming out of a contract situation always makes me nervous. So Barkley, I would hope that it's more about I proved that I'm past my injury situation. I hope he does not get a mega deal because A, it would be stupid by the Giants to do that. B, it would be stupid by any other team to do that. Hope he gets a very well compensated contract that rewards him for his future production. But we've seen what happens to this position when these guys get paid. They tend to fall in the tank. And so I'm going to be nervous about Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, all these players that get these contracts.
I mean, just look at what happened when Eckler got paid and McCaffrey got paid, Henry got paid. I mean,
McCaffrey
you can make
for
the
2
case
years
for
was great
Henry.
after he got paid.
I almost feel like I believe it when it comes to somebody like Jacobs, because we saw Jacobs. He was good until this year, but this was his best year ever. There's no question about it. And it just so happens to be in a contract year. This was a great year for Saquon Barkley, but it's not his best year in the National Football League.
No.
So I kind of feel a little more optimistic about Saquon after he signs any deal that's not a franchise deal, assuming it's not one that just, makes him the highest paid running back and it's a crazy deal. I feel like he can still give us some good numbers. He's in my top.
Definitely give good numbers, but again, if the pairing is quarterback, which you could find, and running back, which may have a fall off, I'll take the 2 receivers.
Yeah,
All right.
Quarterback that can average almost 30 points a game.
I can take Fields right after him.
All right. Sorry for asking such a good question. We have another good question, from Fantasy Life in our chat.
Why is it a bad question if we have a debate?
No, it was a good question.
He said it was a good question.
I meant in sincerity. It's like I wanted to get on with the game. But Fantasy Life says, who is Daniel Jones's backup? What are the odds we see him fly Eagles fly defense?
Tyrod.
Yeah, Tyrod Taylor. The question is, any interest in a Giants backup in this game, like a Matt Breida or Gary Brightwell or a Tyrod Taylor or something like that?
Well, Kenny Galladay, I think, is 76 catches away from an incentive.
He got his incentive when he signed his deal.
Maybe he gets there.
Maybe they make him just run 40 routes.
Yeah, no, we're not interested. I don't even know who the running back to get would be if it were Breida or Brightwell.
But again, when you play DFS, that's the way you win, is by hitting on one of these guys. So you put one of them in the lineup and see if it goes off.
You almost want to believe it's Brightwell because he's the second-year player, young guy who can get a lot of experience.
Yeah,
Breida's a veteran. He's been around several years.
I wonder
if he's the guy.
A FanDuel lineup with Boston Scott. Boston Scott has scored in every single game he's played against the Giants in his career. I certainly see a scenario. I mean, this is a 14-point spread. I could see this being a 30-point game. The Giants played their starters against the Eagles last month, and the Eagles won 48-22. So, they can destroy the Giants, especially if the Giants aren't playing, and Boston Scott could definitely get something. I feel like everybody on the Eagles has to be aware that Boston Scott has scored a touchdown in every career game.
He's going to get his chance. There's no doubt. He's
right?
going to get a chance. Yes.
All right. So, but
I don't know if he's going to get like 15 carries or something like that.
No,
like
but
he literally might play one snap.
You could see, no, I think you could see Sanders. You could see the Eagles just fourth quarter is total garbage time. But I think the only difficult one here, because sit the Giants, start the Eagles, is Miles Sanders, who was great against the Giants in the first meeting, but he's been so frustrating lately. So, start or sit Miles Sanders, won the show on that.
Start.
You love the matchup. You worry about his chances to score a touchdown, especially if Hurts plays, because Hurts has bogarted so many touchdowns from him already.
Tyler Algier or Miles Sanders?
Algier.
Sanders, if he's healthy. How many yards away is he from something?
He's X amount away from Y. Yeah. All right, that's it. Everybody, start the Eagles DST. Want some DFS advice? Check out CBS Sports HQ. We'll be going over that. DFS player props. That kind of stuff on HQ today at noon. We'll see you there. There is no live stream this Sunday, but there is HQ. So you can 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. You can check that out on Sunday. Enjoy the games all weekend long. We'll talk to you on Sunday morning with a quick update for you. And then Monday, we're going to have a recap of week 17, and we'll tell you about all the coaches who are being hired and fired and whatnot. And, we'll start getting into our 2023 rankings. Good job, guys. Good season.
You too.
You guys are awesome. Talk to you later on Fantasy Football Today. Oh, sorry. I hit the wrong button. We're still recording. My bad.
I should tell you something while you're still recording.
What?
You missed a great shot to hit me with the game of the week music at the end. You could have said, okay, Jamie, one last piece of advice for week 18, and Jamie could have said something, and then Dave, go ahead, and then I would have said something, and you could have blasted that music right in my face.
I could have. All right, that's how we'll end the show. I was being serious here. All right.